The story begins with countless monsters wreaking havoc across Earth. Terrified humans scream and flee, desperately trying to escape the onslaught. Dragons dominate the skies, unleashing devastating beams of energy upon helpless victims, while orcs, wolves, and other ferocious beasts tear people apart as if they were nothing more than fragile paper. It all began with the opening of the gates, an event that marked the downfall of our world. Among the countless humans who fell before these creatures, only a rare few awakened supernatural abilities. These individuals became known as the saviors of humanity, the last line of defense against total annihilation. They are called players, wielding swords, shields, staves, and magic-like characters in a fantastical RPG. They stand as the only hope for survival. Their powers allow them to demolish monsters with enchanted blades, destructive spells, and every weapon they can muster against the horrors from beyond the gates. Among these players is our protagonist, Lee Hyunuk, an F-rank combatant ironically titled the Great Steel Emperor. To some, he is spoken of as humanity's last savior, or at least, that was what he once hoped. But that fragile hope shatters as easily as glass struck by a pebble. Savior? What a joke, Hyunuk thinks bitterly, convinced his life has gone terribly wrong. We then find him in military uniform, struggling through an intense exercise. Around him, other soldiers keep their heads down, following orders without question. A commanding officer descends the stairs, barking at them to straighten up. This is the anti-monster troop Amped, a military training camp designed specifically for players who have awakened abilities. Yet despite the seriousness, a nearby poster depicts a cheerful cartoon figure with a wide smile and a thumbs up, suggesting the training is easy and even fun. The words on it proclaim pride and encouragement, but in truth, the reality couldn't be further from that promise. Hyunuk grits his teeth, muttering complaints under his breath as he struggles through the ordeal. How could he, supposedly humanity's last savior, have ended up in such a miserable position? The camp's shooting range stretches endlessly across the barren land, a harsh environment built to mold players into the defenders humanity so desperately needs. The commanding officer shouts at the group, declaring them the strongest, only to lash out moments later, scolding them for losing 9 valuable cartridges during combat. In the awkward training stance they're forced to maintain, Hyunuk subtly activates his ability. With the faintest flick of his index finger, a bullet casing slips out from his pocket and drifts toward his mouth. He swallows it without hesitation. To an outsider, it looks bizarre, but it is the source of his strength, and the reason he carries the title Steel Emperor. The officer, his face twisted with fury, bellows another question to the troops, demanding to know whether they are in their right minds. With their foreheads pressed against the ground and their bodies bent in submission, they shout back in unison, "No, sir." But Hyunuk's attention is elsewhere. He focuses on a glowing system window hovering at his side. The display shows that his available metal weight for manipulation is currently 300 grams. His unique power allows him to control nearby metal, but the amount depends on how much metal he consumes. Chewing on the casing as though it were gum, his expression hardens. How could anyone expect him to be in his right mind? This is, after all, his second time serving in the army. Suddenly, the scene flashes back to an earlier battle. Monsters rampage through a devastated city as Hyunuk, battered and bleeding, collapses onto the ground. His body trembles from the severe wounds inflicted by a monstrous foe. As his vision fades, a mysterious man steps into view. Clad in a white robe and wearing a plague doctor's mask, the figure slowly approaches the fallen Hyunuk. Behind him lies a grim sight, a mountain of human corpses. The players have lost this battle. The once thriving city now lies in utter devastation. Buildings are reduced to rubble, and the streets are littered with lifeless bodies. In the distance, an explosion rips through the silence, its blazing light briefly illuminating the corpses of men, women, children, and the elderly. No one was spared. Yet, no monster is in sight. Holding back tears, our hero forces a bitter smile. He realizes with crushing clarity that it wasn't monsters who destroyed humanity. Instead, mankind was consumed by its own kind, the players. A figure in a white robe steps forward, addressing him with reverence. Humanity's last hero, the Great Steel Emperor. But as the man pulls back his mask, he corrects himself, calling him by his true name, Lee Yanuk, the F rank. Though the robed figure is a human player, his crimson eyes and reptilian pupils reveal he has long since abandoned his humanity. He proudly declares that he and his kind are not betrayers, but divine beings carrying out humanity's judgment. Grinding his teeth, Lee Yanuk struggles to contain his rage. He calls them nothing more than villains. If only he had gained strength a year or even a single day earlier, he could have slain these self-proclaimed gods. In this world, those who sold their souls to the devil and turned on humanity are known as villains. The man in white smirks, asking mockingly if Yanuk feels powerless. As if to deepen the humiliation, a towering brute wielding an enormous, grotesque hammer approaches. Despair closes in, and for the first time, the unbreakable will of our hero falters as tears fall from his eyes. The blonde villain sneers, remarking that someone as weak as Yanuk, an F rank, would have died instantly regardless. Raising his monstrous hammer, the muscular man prepares the final blow, while the blonde calmly declares that such a death suits him perfectly. In his last moments, Yanuk shouts the villain's name Gordon Pry just before the hammer crushes him, and thus humanity's last hero dies. But death is not the end. Against all logic, Yanuk awakens to find himself thrown back in time. Regression, something he believed existed only in novels, has become his reality. A glowing notification window appears before him. Congratulations, you have discovered the path to growth. Metal absorption will begin in 10 minutes. Suddenly, Yanuk is thrust back into the military, standing before a stern commanding officer. The officer bellows, demanding that when he shouts 1, the soldiers must answer soldier, and when he shouts 2, they must respond mindset. Yanuk trembles from exhaustion and disbelief. Though his strength has reset, he accepts it. Regression has given him a second chance, even if it begins here, in the harshness of military training. The brutal routine begins. The officer's shouts echo, and the cadets roar their responses in unison. Yanuk thinks to himself that regression might be a blessing, but why, of all times, did it have to be during his service in the army? Anyone who has ever been a cadet would likely understand the despair of returning to such a place. The scene shifts to a campus-like training ground where soldiers stand in perfect formation, weapons strapped to their backs. The commanding officer orders Platoon 3, Squad 2 into the building. From the whispers among the men, it's clear this is the mess hall, and today's meal is stir-fried chicken stew. Yanuk's expression says it all. I can't believe I'm back here again. As other squads stand at attention, Corporal Lee Hunwick raises his hand. But before they can enter, the officer declares they must complete one more task. Yanuk, weary from training, protests that they've just returned exhausted, and starving the least they deserve is a meal first. The commanding officer smirks menacingly, mocking the idea of training and sneeringly calling Lee Hyunwook a loser. At that moment, Hyunwook remembers who this man is. Sanguk, a notorious army scum. There's always someone like him in every unit, a person who abuses authority just to belittle others. Sanguk steps forward with an air of arrogance, angrily asking if Hyunwook expects his squad to do the work instead. With a mocking tap on Hyunwook's helmet, he jeers that F ranks like him can't even level up, so their only real purpose is to take on extra work as compensation. Hyunwook recalls that in his previous life, he truly believed he would never rise beyond F rank. As Sanguk flips his head back in disdain, he demands to know whether the F rankers will take responsibility if an urgent situation arises during their work. His words carry the implication that they're too weak to be of any real use. Laughter ripples through the soldiers around them as they watch a lowly F-rank corporal being humiliated in front of his squad. Hyunwook's eyes narrow, filled with anger, but it isn't Sanguk he's furious at. His rage is directed at himself, at the pathetic version of him who once allowed men like this to trample over him. Sensing Hyunwook's glare, Sang-guk grows irritated and prepares to escalate, channeling his power as he declares that he's a D rank. He challenges Hyunwook, practically daring him to fight. Hyunwook, however, takes a deep breath, forces composure, and with a faint smile, agrees to carry out his orders, but requests that he and his squad be allowed to eat first. Sang-guk doesn't appreciate his tone and moves to strike again, but Hyunwook quickly points out that others are watching the altercation. If this continues, people might think Sang-guk is abusing his authority, and rumors could spread, tarnishing the image of someone who should be a respected figure. This wasn't how Sang-guk expected things to unfold. He hesitates, then reluctantly accepts Hyunwook's words. With a forced calmness, Hyunwook promises they'll eat quickly before returning to work. Sang-guk clears his throat and suddenly shifts his demeanor, commending his corporal for a job well done. He then scolds the onlookers for idling and orders everyone to eat their fill. Though the situation resolved itself, Hyunwook finds no appetite. He instructs Park Junmo to eat with the others instead. Junmo worries about his superior, but has no choice but to obey. Meanwhile, Sang-guk remains unsettled. Hyunwook's attitude is unlike anything he's seen before, and it makes him suspicious. Hyunwook walks away, fighting the storm of anger within him. He had managed to hold himself together, but he was dangerously close to losing control. Internally, he praises himself for maintaining composure, even though that encounter was nothing compared to what Gordon Pry had done to him. Grinding his teeth in frustration, Hyunwook curses that bastard. If Pry causes more problems and forces him to remain stuck in camp, he risks losing the chance to catch up to him. Determined, he bites into another piece of metal, raising his metal manipulation reserves by 1 gram, bringing his total to 309 G. A faint smile touches his lips as he pulls out several metal spoons. Stepping out of sight, he conceals his progress, unwilling to reveal that he's discovered a way to level up. Meanwhile, back at the cafeteria, the soldiers begin eating when chaos breaks out. Every spoon has mysteriously disappeared. Confusion spreads, and fingers are pointed as accusations fly. One soldier turns to Private Park Junmo, demanding answers. But Junmo, utterly baffled, insists he has no idea what's going on. Meanwhile, Armek is happily devouring the spoons the soldiers have been searching for, swallowing them as if they were tasty snacks. After finishing, his gaze falls on his weapon, the M7 bayonet, which weighs 140 grams. With his current ability to manipulate weight, increasing the mass of the weapon for greater impact is the only thing he can control. Yet, this presents a dilemma. Cartridges weigh only 1 gram, and spoons just 1.25 grams. At this rate, it will take him far too long to level up meaningfully. He wonders if his current plan is truly his only option. With just 3 days left to prepare before he must face a level 1 boss mob, determination burns in his eyes. Testing his strength, he lifts the bayonet with his mind and smiles with satisfaction, declaring to the world that he'll prove what it means to be a true expert. 3 days pass. The night sky cloaks the 3rd Brigade, 1st Battalion station at Enson's 5th Post. Standing guard are Lee Han-wook and Private Junmo. The private can't help but notice something different about his corporal. Han-wook, however, doesn't seem bothered as he casually checks his watch and asks if it troubles him. Junmo admits it doesn't, but he remains curious. RMC, meanwhile, is absorbed in his system window, which now shows he can manipulate an additional 6 grams, bringing his total to 1,359 grams. Still, Junmo observes aloud that his corporal seems to have changed, and for the better. Suddenly, without a word, Han-wook walks toward him. Caught off guard, Junmo worries he may have said something wrong. But instead of scolding him, Han-wook asks if he trusts him. Confused by the sudden question, Junmo answers that he does. Satisfied, Han-wook smirks, reloads his gun, and resumes his post, leaving Junmo even more puzzled. Then, without warning, a gate opens in the darkness, spewing forth hideous goblins. Their twisted faces leer as they clutch crude weapons, preparing to descend upon the camp while most of the soldiers are fast asleep. One goblin lets out a shrill battle cry only to be silenced instantly as a knife whizzes through the air, striking it dead on the spot. The figure behind the attack is none other than our MC, Lee Hun-wook, who has taken it upon himself to confront the enemy at their very spawn point. The goblins growl and snarl at him, recognizing his threat. This is the moment he has been waiting for. With a confident smile, he tells them he has been anticipating their arrival. But then, something unexpected catches his eye. The goblin he struck down earlier isn't finished yet. Despite bleeding heavily, the creature staggers back to its feet. Hun-wook realizes this is no longer the life where he could complete every ambush flawlessly. He is still just level 1. This thought frustrates him after all. This is his second chance at life, and he despises repeating the same struggles. The injured goblin charges at him, arrow straight, thirsting for revenge. Yet, before it can land a strike, its head is swiftly severed by Hun-wook's blade, the decapitated skull flying through the air while the body collapses. The surrounding goblins roar in fury, brandishing their weapons and preparing for an all-out assault. From the corpse of the slain goblin drops a glowing red crystal-like object. Hun-wook manipulates it into his mouth and eats it without hesitation. The monsters recoil in shock. To them, it is horrifying the man just ate something that came out of one of their own. The taste is bitter and revolting, and Hun-wook grimaces. Yet he knows exactly what it is: mana steel, a rare metal from another world. Though disgusting, he understands the truth. Consuming steel is the path to his strength. Regardless of the type, it is necessary for his growth. Even the goblins, who find his act repulsive, watch in disbelief. His status window congratulates him for consuming mana steel, stating that his mana will increase upon absorption. The weight increase, however, remains unknown. This revelation fills Hun-wook with joy. If he consumes every item he encounters, his journey will become much easier. Now that his path is clear, it's time to resume the battle. With his bayonet in hand, Hun-wook declares with a fearless grin, "The real feast begins now." But before continuing the fight, let's rewind to the moment when Corporal Hun-wook reloaded his gun in front of Private Junmo. He casually revealed that he could sense metal in motion. This startled Junmo, who had always believed Hun-wook could only detect visible metal, which, in truth, had been the case until now. Junmo immediately tells his corporal that he'll report this incident as soon as possible. However, RMC responds sharply, explaining that the branch office would never believe an F-rank could sense something this complex. At that moment, Lee Yanuk steps forward and decides to investigate the situation himself. He orders the private to remain on guard and warns him never to report this to higher-ups. If the military learns about it, they'll seize all the weapons for themselves and he'll lose his chance to grow stronger. Suddenly, the monsters launch a furious charge, their crude blades gleaming as they thirst for RMC's blood. Hunuk advances with perfect composure, masterfully maneuvering his bayonet to strike with ruthless efficiency. His movements are swift and precise. He even performs a barrel roll to evade the vanguard's slashes, breaking through their frontline defense. With their backs now exposed, RMC hurls his spinning bayonet into their weak points, drawing screams of agony as the monsters collapse. An experienced fighter, he carefully targets their legs, crippling them one by one. While the massacre unfolds, one creature observes from the shadows above a muscular figure perched on a tree branch, its fangs sharper than the rest. This one is clearly a high-ranking member of the monster clan. Meanwhile, RMC revels in the slaughter. He taunts the hideous creatures, daring them to keep screaming as he cuts them down. Then, in a sudden twist, one goblin manages to slip into his blind spot and lunges forward with its blade. But RMC reacts instantly, manipulating the energy around one monster's weapon to parry the strike. The force of the clash sends the blade flying, dislocating the attacker's hand. Before the creature can recover, RMC slices its throat open with his spinning bayonet. Blood sprays violently, and though the monster tries to scream, only a gurgle escapes its torn throat. Lee Yanuk deliberately prolongs the creature's suffering, ensuring the others witness its agony. His cruelty intensifies their fear, and as soon as the drop of Monal confirms the kill, he spits venomous words at the trembling horde. He snarls that they dared stab him in the back, and for that, they will face his wrath. His rage burns so intensely that he threatens to devour the next fool that tries to ambush him. In this moment, it's difficult to tell who the true monster is. RMC's murderous intent spreads like poison, freezing the goblins in terror. Their will to fight crumbles beneath the sheer weight of his killing aura. But he isn't done yet. He begins searching for what he calls the main course of tonight's hunt. His eyes scan the battlefield, frustration building as he fails to spot it. In the past, he's trained himself to use other methods of detection. He knows the real threat the cunning boss monster is still hiding in the trees. Since it refuses to reveal itself, RMC decides to bait it out. He notices the corpse of a fallen goblin and pretends to lower his guard, reaching for it as if defenseless. The shaman lurking nearby seizes this chance. Clutching one of the amulets dangling from its neck, the hideous creature prepares to strike. Hunuk continues the act, casually bending down to retrieve the Mona steel lying on the ground. The other goblins remain paralyzed with fear, too petrified to interfere, while the shaman frantically begins channeling a spell. Glowing runes spiral from the amulet, signaling its activation. RMC smirks darkly, a predator recognizing its prey. He waits patiently, knowing the boss has just revealed itself. The shaman grins with cruel confidence, believing it has secured the advantage. Once its spell is fully charged, it shatters the amulet, unleashing the attack. The earth splits open violently, the ground trembling beneath RMC's feet. Yet his expression remains calm, almost smug. This was exactly what he had anticipated. He smiles confidently, finally pinpointing the shaman's location after a brief delay. Without warning, jagged spikes of rock surge from the ground, striking indiscriminately at everything above, including the shaman's own underlings. The attack is devastating. The rumbling echoes all the way back to camp, though not strong enough to cause a major disturbance. One of the soldiers notices the faint tremor and reports it to his platoon leader. However, the gruff commander has no patience for such trivial concerns, dismissing it as nothing more than a minor shake. He warns his subordinate not to disturb his rest again over something so insignificant. Meanwhile, at the battlefield, goblin corpses lie skewered on the stone spikes, yet Huck is nowhere to be found. The surviving goblins tremble at the sight of their impaled comrades. Even with their limited intelligence, they appear to mourn their kin, something their shaman clearly does not, as he is the one responsible for this needless slaughter. Surveying the aftermath, the shaman admires the massive cluster of spikes, now cloaked in smoke and dust, clearly visible from afar. Foolishly, he takes pride in his work, inhaling deeply and standing tall in self-satisfaction. But his moment of triumph is shattered when a voice cuts through the haze. "I found you." A chill runs down his spine. The smoke parts as a spinning blade slices through it, flying straight toward him with deadly precision. At the last second, the shaman deflects the strike, revealing why he holds the title of Goblin Boss. Hunuk feigns disappointment, pretending his attack has failed. The arrogant creature laughs, believing he has easily thwarted the attempt, but the smug grin fades quickly. Hunuk's feigned strike was merely a diversion. From the side, a bayonet darts in, aimed directly at the shaman. Realizing too late, the shaman reacts desperately. The blade grazes his neck, leaving only a shallow cut as he manages to catch the weapon with his bare hand. The near miss enrages him. Now bearing his fangs, the goblin boss proves himself a formidable foe. Hunuk smiles, not impressed, but quietly disappointed in his past self for once being so weak. The time for tricks has ended. A real fight is about to begin. The shaman straightens, confident that he and his minions can overwhelm Hunuk. Perched on his vantage point, he sneers down at his opponent. Hunuk taunts him back, daring him to come down, claiming he'll wipe them all out at once. In truth, the situation is far more dangerous than he lets on. He is surrounded, and the boss remains out of reach. With the goblin boss fighting head-on, the other goblins regain their courage and rally behind him. To make matters worse, a notification appears before Hunuk. His mana reserves have dropped sharply, leaving only 40% remaining. The battle is becoming dire. He knows he must fight more carefully and manage his mana with precision. Forced to adjust, Hunuk prepares to draw his rifle, though he had hoped to finish the shaman using his ability and claim the mana steal. The shaman, raising his staff, prepares to unleash another spell. Hunuk steadies his weapon, determined to end this quickly when something unexpected happens. The goblin boss pauses, his expression shifting as his gaze catches sight of something. He smiles, realizing an opportunity. Just as Hunuk is about to open fire, a voice echoes from the distance. It's Private Juno. Having abandoned his post, he searches for his corporal, calling out innocently into the battlefield. Hunuk immediately turns, alarmed for Juno's safety. The young private stands unaware of the monsters lurking nearby, casually calling for his superior. Seizing this perfect moment, the shaman commands his subordinates to attack the defenseless soldier. In an instant, all the goblins surrounding Hyan leap away and charge toward Junmo. Yanuk has no choice but to prioritize the safety of his soldier, diverting his attention from the boss to assist the private. Junmo shouts in alarm as the monsters close in. One goblin rushes forward, blade raised, ready to cut him in half. Acting quickly, Hunwook orders the private to duck. Just in time, his bullets strike the attacking goblin, stopping its swing a heartbeat before it can reach the boy. Knowing bullets alone won't be enough to bring the creature down, Hunwook follows up by manipulating a blade. But the goblin parries the attack with surprising ease. These things are evolving, Hunwook thinks grimly. Still, it's far from enough to defeat the man once hailed as humanity's final savior. He retaliates with a brutal flying knee, followed by unloading his magazine directly into the goblin's mouth at point-blank range. The beast collapses instantly. Without hesitation, the battle-hardened Hunwook whirls to confront the remaining goblins only to find the area empty. The monsters have vanished, leaving only the private curled in a fetal position on the ground. They had fled, realizing they couldn't defeat Hunwook in direct combat. He grits his teeth in frustration. Their caution had cost him the chance to wipe them out. The sound of gunfire draws attention from the soldiers at camp, who immediately call in over the radio. Yanuk responds, reporting that a gate has appeared in the area and that goblins were involved, though they've since retreated. He confirms there are no casualties. Headquarters acknowledges the report and orders them to hold position. Hunwook knows exactly what this means. She will arrive soon. The radio instructs everyone to prepare for a 5-minute standby due to the emergency gate activity. Elsewhere, a striking red-haired woman readies herself for battle, Amp's paladin, Lieutenant Seo Yunia. With her bright crimson hair and piercing blue eyes, she radiates authority. Hunwook remembers her well. In his past life, she closed the gate and claimed all spoils for the military, including every weapon and monster drop. That had even included a legendary treasure adamantium. That item, the ultimate weapon, was the very tool that had once earned him the title of Steel Emperor. If he fails to seize it now, the opportunity won't come again for another 4 years, and if that happens, the same disastrous future will repeat itself. He cannot allow that. Determined, Hunwook resolves to clear the gate before the standby squad arrives. But to find the goblins, he must first think like them. They need a living human sacrifice. Analyzing the possibilities, he rules out the nearby city too densely populated, their numbers far too small to risk an invasion there. At that moment, the radio crackles. The 6th post calls for backup, reporting they're under goblin ambush. Hyunwook's eyes light up. This is his chance. A grin spreads across his face as he prepares to move. He informs HQ that the 5th post will head out to assist. But HQ immediately denies his request, citing his F rank and ordering him to stand by. To them, his help would be insignificant. Hyunwook clenches his jaw. He's not about to let bureaucracy steal his chance. Better to face punishment later than lose adamantium forever. Junmo, panicked, begs him to stop. Disobeying orders could mean more than confinement, it could lead to a full military trial. But Hyunwook argues that the 6th post won't survive without help. Most of their soldiers are archers and mages, specialized for long-range combat. If goblins close the distance, they'll be massacred. Still hesitant, Junmo protests that one man won't change the outcome. Hyunwook smirks at this and replies that he won't be going alone. Junmo will be coming with him. The private's face turns pale, realizing what that means. Meanwhile, at the 6th post, chaos erupts. Soldiers are in full panic as goblins press the attack, and their leader, Corporal Kim Jong-o, is already down. The situation grows more desperate by the second. The goblins were wreaking havoc at the outpost, and the only directive from HQ was clear: defend their position at all costs. At this rate, the 6th post was on the verge of being completely overrun. The soldiers had barricaded themselves inside the guardhouse while the monsters outside relentlessly tore at its defenses. Corporal Kim, badly wounded, continued using his ability to reinforce the structure, but his pale face and blood loss revealed just how dire his condition was. His second-in-command couldn't hide his worry, watching as Kim struggled to keep the barrier standing. With strained breath, Kim admitted he couldn't hold on much longer. The guardhouse was bound to collapse soon. Desperation overcame the second-in-command as he spammed the radio, begging for immediate reinforcements. Then, suddenly, an unsettling silence fell over the battlefield. The pounding and crashing stopped, only for a greater terror to reveal itself. Stones and boulders began to float unnaturally into the air, the work of the goblin shaman, who was preparing a telekinetic assault. The brief moment of quiet shattered as a storm of rocks rained down on the outpost, smashing against the guardhouse and leaving it on the brink of destruction. The soldiers inside could only brace themselves, fully aware that the structure wouldn't withstand another attack. Corporal Kim, realizing the boss monster had finally joined the fray, knew what awaited them. Once the guardhouse fell, the goblins would capture them, drag them to an altar, and rip out their hearts while still alive. Faced with that horrifying fate, Kim resolved to meet death on his own terms, weapon in hand. His second-in-command, unable to stop him, wept bitterly, fully aware of their hopeless situation. The shaman sneered, gathering another wave of rubble to finish the job. The guardhouse's destruction seemed inevitable, but just as despair reached its peak, the radio crackled to life. Reinforcements were on their way. The voice ordered them to prepare a bow, fire an arrow toward a light that would appear, and to imbue it with flame. Though doubtful, Private Park followed orders. It was their only chance. As he peeked through the window, he saw the boulders floating again, ready to strike. Rocks obstructed his vision, making it impossible to spot any light. Then, in a sudden flash, a glow shimmered in the distance. Park recognized it immediately and steadied his aim. The voice on the radio belonged to none other than Lee Hyunwook. He instructed Private Park to focus on the light, reassuring him that he would control the trigger. To the soldier's shock, the crossbow fired on its own, the arrow weaving perfectly through the flying debris before embedding itself into the goblin mount. Moments later, the projectile exploded, killing the creature instantly. And that devastating strike had only cost Hyunwook a mere 1% of his mana. It was all according to his plan. He knew that with only a fraction of his power, the archer's abilities could be amplified enough to devastate the enemy. But the battlefield took notice. The goblin shaman, in particular, was shaken. The troublesome enemy from before had returned, and he wouldn't allow this interference to continue. Snarling, he redirected his barrage of rubble toward Hyunwook, determined to crush him once and for all. The boulders flew at terrifying speed, but they struck only a burning goblin already writhing in flames. The arrow's true target had long since vanished. Hyunwook had dodged flawlessly. The archer looked on in disbelief, realizing the attacks aimed at them had simply disappeared. Quickly, another order came through: reload and fire again. He obeyed without hesitation, drawing another arrow and locking onto the distant glow. Meanwhile, the goblin shaman noticed his amulets were nearly depleted. Only 2 spells remained. As he prepared to unleash another attack, his eyes caught sight of his battered subordinate, its body trembling on the brink of detonation from the damage it had endured. The shaman seethes with rage, furious at having failed yet again to eliminate his persistent enemy. Meanwhile, Private Junmo carefully sneaks through the battlefield, crouching low and hiding among the bushes. Corporal Hyunwook had ordered him to locate the boss monster, but Junmo struggles to figure out how he'll signal his superior without putting himself in danger. As he debates, he suddenly witnesses the aftermath of Hyunwook's devastating assault. Goblins run around frantically, screaming in agony as flames consume their bodies. Junmo is left in awe, amazed far beyond admiration. His corporal had only mentioned creating a distraction, but what Junmo sees looks more like a one-man army wiping out the entire enemy force. Lost in thought, Junmo becomes careless. A goblin lurking nearby spots him and screeches before raising its blade to strike. Junmo's heart sinks. He knows he has made a critical mistake. Just as the weapon comes down, Hyunwook's flying bayonet shoots past, striking the goblin and saving the young private. Hyunwook then signals with a flash of light, instructing the archer to take aim. Once more, he manipulates the arrow mid-flight, sending it straight into its target. Before leaving Junmo, Hyunwook motions for him to ready his weapon. The private obeys immediately, though he can't help but wonder, could this truly be the same Corporal Lee Hyunwook he once knew? One after another, goblins collapse under Hyunwook's relentless assault. The shaman, watching in disbelief, still refuses to reveal his hiding place. Hyunwook frowns, realizing that something is wrong. Then it dawns on him the cunning shaman is waiting. He's stalling, biding his time until Hyunwook's mana is depleted. And it's working. Hyunwook's reserves have already fallen to just 12%. While searching desperately for the boss, Hyunwook suddenly hears his private cry out for help. He turns and sees the goblin shaman gripping Junmo by the head, holding him hostage. Hyunwook instinctively tries to strike with his flying bayonet, but the shaman presses its jagged staff against Junmo's throat, threatening to kill him if Hyunwook makes a move. Hyunwook grits his teeth. With his subordinate in danger, his hands are tied. Slowly, he raises them, appearing to surrender. Instantly, lower-ranked goblins swarm around, ready to finish him off. But Hyunwook remains calm. He quietly thanks his private for unknowingly delivering the decisive move in this battle. With a flick of his finger, Hyunwook activates the trigger on Junmo's rifle. The weapon roars to life, unleashing its magazine directly into the shaman's body. Blood sprays as the monster staggers, fatally wounded. Hyunwook dashes forward, weaving past the attacks of enraged goblins, his eyes fixed on Junmo. The shaman, overcome with pain, collapses to its knees and releases its grip. Junmo gasps for air, but quickly assures his corporal that he's unharmed. Relieved, Hyunwook allows himself a rare smile, knowing the end of this fight is near. The shaman, however, makes one last desperate attempt to escape. Clutching its wounds, it turns and flees toward the gate. Hyunwook sends his flying bayonet after it, but the strike bounces harmlessly off the monster, is protected by leather armor. His mana is dwindling rapidly, now at just 9%, but he refuses to let the creature escape. The shaman sprints for the gate, its only hope of survival. If it reaches the threshold, everything Hyunwook has fought for will be wasted. But then he notices something: its necklace, glinting faintly with steel. Summoning the last of his strength, Hyunwook pours every drop of mana he has left into manipulating it. His mana falls to 7%, then 5%, then empties entirely, but it's enough. The necklace tightens, halting the monster in its tracks. With sheer willpower, Hyunwook drives his bayonet forward, forcing the shaman to take the final blow. The steel pierces through, ending the monster once and for all. His body finally gives in to exhaustion, his breathing ragged, his limbs heavy. He knows his ability still lacks refinement, and his current body tires far too quickly. As he steadies himself, a bright firework bursts across the night sky. The holy light has arrived the main army, along with Amp's strongest player, Seo Unha. Time is slipping away, and Hyunwook knows he must find the adamantium steel quickly before the army confiscates the loot. After thoroughly searching the shaman's corpse, he finally discovers what he's been looking for. But just as he lays his hands on it, a group of soldiers arrives, ordering Huck to raise his arms. The crystal, still dripping with goblin blood, glimmers ominously. Without hesitation, Huck shoves it into his mouth and swallows it in a single gulp. The soldiers demand he identify himself and state his rank and name. Hyunwook slowly turns around and complies. Thankfully, he manages to consume the entire monast steel in time. His face, however, remains smeared with the disgusting green blood of goblins. One of the soldiers recognizes Hyunwook and rushes to support him, while others stay alert, warning that the open gate could still conceal lurking enemies. Meanwhile, Seo Yuna notices something unusual at the scene. She wonders how just 4 regular soldiers could have taken down a boss monster. Studying the corpses closely, she realizes the wounds all share the same characteristics. Her sharp deduction leads her to conclude that this was the handiwork of a single individual. She's no paladin for nothing, her investigative skills are razor sharp. At the same time, the system window notifies Armek of the successful ingestion of the adamantium. The process will require a full 10 hours for complete absorption, but Hyunwook is more than satisfied. As he is carried away on a stretcher, he can't help but smile, an expression that doesn't escape the keen eyes of Paladin Lieutenant Ku Yunya. She finds his smile suspicious, especially given the dire situation, but Hyunwook is far too focused on one thing. He finally possesses the adamantium, the key to his exponential growth. Yuna doesn't have long to dwell on her doubts. Reports come in that goblins have been spotted fleeing near the 6th post, drawing the soldiers' attention elsewhere. As Hyunwook rests, he begins to sense changes within himself. Though the adamantium has yet to be fully absorbed, he can already feel a new resonance with the surrounding metals. This marks the beginning of the Steel Emperor's long-awaited comeback. Days later, rumors spread like wildfire following the incident at the barracks gate. Whispers tell of an F-rank soldier who single-handedly annihilated the monsters. Stories circulate about the 6th post, where soldiers had all but resigned themselves to death until a lone F-rank corporal appeared, wielding a massive sword, and cut down the goblins. While many soldiers chatter excitedly about the mysterious corporal, not everyone is convinced. Sergeant Oh Sang-guk, a wizard and commander of the 2nd Squad in the Specialty Communications Unit, scoffs at the rumors. He refuses to believe such a thing could be possible. However, one of his subordinates insists the story is true. Before the soldier can speak further, a bulky officer interrupts, chastising him for speaking so informally in front of Sang-guk. Terrified, the subordinate Private Park Anil, a short bowman stationed at the 6th post, salutes properly and stammers a promise to correct his mistake. Sang-guk, with a sly tone, questions the bulky officer, Won-suk, asking whether he himself could tear apart goblins barehanded or handle 3 bosses in a gate raid alone. Won-suk immediately denies it. Sang-guk nods in agreement no matter how they consider the situation. There's simply no way an F-rank, let alone a common worker, could have accomplished such a feat. They brush it off as a fluke. Still, Sang-guk acknowledges that even if it were pure luck, an F-rank soldier running wild poses a potential threat to military discipline. Won-suk seizes the opportunity to suggest they use this incident as a means of keeping the corporal in check, arguing they can't allow military order to be disrupted. On a seemingly peaceful day, with the sun shining and the air calm, Armik finds himself standing inside the office of the battalion commander. A sharp salute echoes through the room as he formally addresses the commander, all while inwardly grumbling that the military won't simply let the matter slide. Present in the room are Lieutenant Ku Yunha, the Black Paladin and a B-rank player, as well as Lieutenant Lee Minhee, a C-rank wizard specializing in warp magic from the Magic Corps. The battalion commander himself, Major Kim Kango, sits at the head. Known as the King of Mountains of Namsun, Kim is a B-rank player ranked 166th in all of South Korea. Speaking with authority, Major Kim questions Hyunuk directly. He asks if the corporal had indeed disobeyed the standby order and, despite that, successfully repelled the first wave of the gate. Hyunuk knows all too well that a single misstep here could lead to a military trial, a trial that would almost certainly not end in his favor. He's desperately hoping to avoid being sent to the guardhouse. At the very least, he refuses to lie or cover anything up. Instead, he speaks the truth, explaining that he witnessed the outbreak at the gates while on duty and immediately rushed to respond. The major, struggling to believe that a mere F-rank soldier could achieve such a feat, bluntly remarks that under normal circumstances someone of his rank should have been torn apart instantly. Even though Hyunuk was once hailed as the Great Steel Emperor and humanity's last savior, the crushing pressure radiating from the major is still overwhelming. But Hyunuk knows that if he falters now, his military career is as good as over. With conviction, he declares that he feels the battalion commander has deceived him. Lieutenant Min, unwilling to let such blatant disrespect slide, moves to intervene, but the major halts her, intrigued by why Hyunuk feels this way. Hyunuk continues, explaining that from the moment he joined the AMT, the battalion commander instilled a belief in them. The major is taken aback by this reply, his curiosity only deepening. After all, the commander had always emphasized to cadets that no matter their rank, if they applied AMT's tactical textbook properly, even E-ranks could take on trolls. And that's exactly what Hyunuk had done. He further explains that the enemies he fought were only goblins, so his actions should not be seen as impossible. He protests that while he did disobey Command Control's order to hold position, if he hadn't rushed in, the soldiers at the 6th post would have been wiped out. Internally, the Great Steel Emperor praises himself for mounting such a logical defense. But now comes the emotional appeal. Hyunuk invokes the major's own words, "For a true soldier, there are no ranks. They must always be prepared for the worst and fight with everything they have." To drive his point home, Hyunuk adds that these were the very words of the battalion commander, a man he deeply respects. He explains that it was the commander's lessons during brutal training that guided him, and he put those strategies into practice with his life on the line. The only reason he could endure life in the military despite being mocked and belittled as an F-rank was because of the commander's teachings. For the major to deny the results of that belief feels to Hyunuk as though his entire military life has been invalidated. That is why he insists he feels scammed. At this point, the story briefly shifts to the life of the esteemed battalion commander, Kim Kangjo. Around the time he was appointed as a 2nd lieutenant, the gates first began opening. In one early battle against orcs, he nearly lost his life, but returned to the army without hesitation, becoming one of AMT's foundational members. In every sense, he is a soldier through and through. Hyunuk concludes by telling the major that he embraced his superior's words as his creed, putting his life on the line for his fellow soldiers. A moving declaration, one that makes it impossible for the major to send him to a military trial. The towering major steps forward and grips Hyunuk's arms, his massive frame looming over the corporal. The silence and strange intensity make Hyunuk uneasy, until the major suddenly declares that the corporal has been promoted to non-commissioned officer NCO. An NCO, while not yet a commissioned officer, still holds an essential leadership role within the unit. At that exact moment, Hyunuk's notification window appears. The adamantium absorption is complete. He has gained a new skill steel physique, and his total weight manipulation has increased to 2,558 grams. The two lieutenants are left stunned by the major's decision, with Yuna even gasping aloud in disbelief. But the battalion commander is utterly sincere, tears forming in his eyes as he is moved by Hyunuk's story of bravery. Meanwhile, Hyunuk begins to sweat. This was not the outcome he expected at all, and now he worries he may have bitten off far more than he can handle. The scene transitions to the training room of the 3rd Brigade's 1st Battalion, where soldiers are already immersed in their rigorous exercises. Hyunwook is at the gym, pushing through his bench presses while cursing his rotten luck. He can't help but think he's walked into a miserable situation while trying to stay away from the guardhouse. From a short distance, Private Wok and Sergeant Sanguk are watching him closely. They exchange knowing glances and quickly decide to have some fun at the expense of the newly promoted NCO. As Hyunwook wipes the sweat from his forehead, his thoughts wander back to what just happened. Thanks to Lieutenant Lee Min's intervention, he was given time to consider the promotion. After all, no one has ever heard of an F-rank player being promoted to NCO. Still, Hyunwook would have preferred to stay under the radar for a while longer, but that option is gone now. Private Wok approaches and asks if Hyunwook is finished with the bench, despite it being obvious he isn't. The two lock eyes in silence until Hyunwook finally asks what he wants. With a smug grin, Wok comments that it would be embarrassing for the famous man of the moment to lift such a low weight. To drive his point home, he grabs the barbell and starts curling it, showing off. The tension between the two quickly catches the attention of nearby officers. Hyunwook realizes this was orchestrated by Sergeant Sanguk from the very start. If he avoids the confrontation now, Won-suk will bully him openly, just as he did in Hyunwook's previous life. Though he had planned to stay quiet for a while, Hyunwook has no choice. With irritation written across his face, he tells Won-suk his timing is perfect since he's already annoyed. Then, to everyone's shock, he challenges the bulky officer to a spar. The gym falls into stunned silence, especially the two bullies who thought they had him cornered. But this is exactly the chance they wanted to humiliate the new NCO. Word spreads fast, and soon the entire unit knows about the fight. Soldiers gather eagerly around the octagon, buzzing with anticipation. With both fighters geared up, Won-suk can barely contain his excitement. He declares loudly that it's time to teach the great Private Hyunwook a lesson. The crowd roars as the two step into the ring. Won-suk, wearing a cocky grin, makes the first move, swinging a heavy punch. Hyunwook stands his ground, fully prepared to fight back. The hefty soldier throws his fist with such force that it seems to carry pressure through the air, aiming to crush Hyunwook with sheer strength. Meanwhile, outside under a starry night sky, two soldiers chat casually near a streetlight. One blurts out in shock after hearing that Choi Yoonjun has taken a vacation. His companion, wearing a green cap, admits he came just to see it for himself. Rumor has it, Choi possesses the skills to become a true sword saint. Another soldier nearby chimes in, reassuring him that while Sergeant Choi Mango is the current ace, there's someone else rising fast, the future ace who even possesses the barbarian trait. They speak of Choi Mango, the tactical genius of the Black Tiger unit, one of the most elite special forces groups. But beyond their reputation, information about them is strictly classified. The green-capped soldier looks disappointed, but his comrade urges him to check things out since he came all this way leaving empty-handed would be a shame. Back in the arena, Hyunwook struggles against Won-suk's relentless fists. Each blow looks massive, but Hyunwook's reflexes are sharp, dodging with precision as though he's dancing on the edge of fate. Frustrated, Won-suk unleashes a storm of punches in rapid succession. Hyunwook weaves between them, narrowly avoiding each one like a pro in a championship dodgeball match. The crowd gasps as Hyunwook stumbles back, colliding with the arena's boundary net. For a tense moment, it looks like the fight might be over, but he quickly steadies himself and regains composure. Before he can counter, Won-suk is already winding up for another devastating punch. Judging by Hyunwook's expression, it's clear he's bracing for a serious blow. The onlookers recoil in shock, convinced this is the end. But to their disbelief, Won-suk's mighty punch misses its mark, slamming uselessly against the boundary net. The fight rages on as our protagonist skillfully rolls across the ground, dodging with the agility of a seasoned warrior. Rising swiftly, he assumes a confident stance, while the burly opponent across from him looks as though steam is about to burst from his ears. Frustrated beyond measure, the hefty fighter can't stand the fact that his target continues to evade him with such effortless swagger. With a sly smirk, our hero casually gestures with his fingers, an unspoken taunt daring the brute to come at him. That simple motion proves more effective than any insult, sending the hulking man into a rage-fueled frenzy. The crowd erupts, sensing that round 2 is about to begin, and the tension in the arena reaches its peak. At that moment, Warrant Officer Cheon and a soldier arrive on the scene. The soldier, watching the clash unfold, quietly remarks that the setup feels almost like an audition meant for the warrant officer himself. Cheon, deep in thought, questions the soldier's perspective on what's happening. The soldier answers coolly, noting that despite appearances, the hefty fighter's punches carry real weight. Yet, as they watch closely, it becomes evident that no matter how powerful the strikes are, not a single one lands on the blue-haired warrior. Cheon voices the obvious: what's the use of strength if it fails to connect? The soldier suggests that perhaps the man is simply inexperienced, but warns that if he ever does land a clean hit, the one standing before him won't survive it. Meanwhile, Sergeant Sanguk's booming voice cuts through the noise. He berates the hefty fighter, accusing him of holding back against the blue-haired man. His tone grows harsher, commanding him to stop playing around and fight seriously. The crowd joins in the scolding chorus, reminding him that this spar isn't just for show. Serious bets ride on his performance. From the hefty fighter's perspective, however, things look entirely different. He isn't holding back at all. He's giving it everything he's got. Yet the mounting pressure from both the crowd and his opponent begins to take its toll. His movements grow heavy, his body feels burdened, and every step becomes a struggle. Still, with stubborn determination, he lunges forward to launch another attack. Then something unusual happens. The metallic pieces on his body zippers, buckles, even lace holes begin to glimmer with an eerie blue light. Our protagonist raises his hand, subtly manipulating the shimmering energy. It becomes clear he possesses the power of metal control. With a flick of his fingers, he intensifies the weight of the battlefield itself, turning the ground beneath the hefty fighter into a prison of iron. The man's feet sink, his body straining as if fighting in quicksand. Yet, even as exhaustion overtakes him, he refuses to surrender. He throws punch after punch, his body moving as though submerged in a swamp, each strike weaker than the last. Our protagonist, on the other hand, watches with delight, a grin spreading across his face at the chaotic spectacle. Finally, gasping for breath, the hefty fighter calls for a break, complaining that his legs feel strange. The blue-haired warrior only smirks wider, relishing his opponent's suffering. Grinding his teeth in frustration, the brute hurls insults, swearing under his breath. But then, something changes. Determined to prove himself, he unleashes his true power. His eyes glow, dust erupts around him, and an ominous energy surges forth. The soldier observing smiles knowingly, while even Cheon seems intrigued by this transformation. Before their eyes, the once burly man grows larger, veins bulging across his forehead as he bellows out his ultimate form berserker mode. Towering and terrifying, he radiates an ominous aura, prepared to crush the annoying mosquito that has been dancing just beyond his reach. Seeing the situation escalate, the steel guy realizes it's time to get serious. He plants himself firmly, taking on a formidable stance. The sergeant, who was already unsettled, now finds himself downright alarmed. What began as a sparring match has grown far beyond its usual boundaries. From the warrant's perspective, this is no longer a simple bout, it's a brutal clash of survival, as if an enraged buffalo and a leopard with hidden fangs were locked in combat. Despite the tension, the warrant can't tear his eyes away. enthralled by the raw intensity. The soldier watching alongside him is equally fired up, remarking that it's the first time in his life he's ever seen a berserker capable of body strengthening. The massive opponent stands tall and smug before the steel guy, sneering that his enemy might as well be 6 feet under already. In the blink of an eye, the giant vanishes from sight, reappearing with a crushing strike straight to the steel guy's stomach. The blow is so fierce that the blue-haired fighter crashes into the boundary net wall with thunderous force. From the sidelines, Sergeant Sanguk erupts with excitement, cheering wildly at the sight of his man finally landing a decisive blow. The crowd roars with equal energy, the arena vibrating with anticipation. But inside the ring, something strange happens. The giant's hand trembles, steam hissing into the air. His expression shifts from triumph to confusion. When he struck, it felt like bare fists colliding with unyielding steel. Standing tall despite the brutal hit, the steel guy steadies himself in a defensive stance, clearly prepared for whatever comes next. His profile card reveals his rank D class. His ability lies in manipulating mana to temporarily reinforce parts of his body. More fascinating still, consuming high-hardness magical metals can elevate his skill, transforming his body into steel itself. His steely fists, gleaming with power, explain the sly grin playing across his face. To further humiliate his opponent, he mocks the giant, calling him a pig and daring him to come at him again. Enraged, the massive fighter bellows with fury, spewing insults and labeling him a worthless F-ranker. With a guttural scream, he lunges forward, only to find himself striking at empty air. The steel guy seizes his chance. Though he mutters that wasting his skills on such an opponent is beneath him, he turns his feet into solid steel and drives them forward with crushing force. The giant crashes down, his once cocky demeanor shattered. The blow distorts his face, rippling across his features as he crumples to the ground. Without hesitation, the steel guy rains down punches, relentless and merciless, as if determined to set a record for the longest combo ever thrown. The crowd gasps in awe, jaws dropping faster than Sergeant Sanuk's misplaced confidence. Warrant Officer Cheon grins slyly, like a lizard basking in the sun, realizing that his neighborhood may have been hiding a true beast all along, a beast with steel fists. To him, it's the natural order, a cheetah finally bringing down a buffalo. But before the crowd can celebrate, the buffalo stirs once more. With surprising agility, the giant seizes the steel guy by the collar, hoisting him into the air with those monstrous hands. Up close, the damage to the giant's face is brutal, his eye swollen nearly shut, his bruises blooming a deep purple. Grinding his teeth, he curses, swearing he has no idea what tricks this bastard is playing. His grip tightens, and the steel guy suddenly looks like a kitten being manhandled by an oversized toddler. The massive fighter swings him high, preparing for a devastating slam into the earth. For a brief, terrifying moment, the steel guy wonders if this might be the end. But he refuses to give in. Clinging to the giant's fist with everything he has, he locks his legs around his opponent's arm like a bolt of lightning. The maneuver catches the giant completely off guard, halting his attack just inches from the ground. Now, the two fighters are locked in a stalemate, each straining for dominance. The giant, losing his composure, falters under the unexpected move. Watching closely, Warrant Officer Shin can't help but acknowledge the buffalo's sharp instincts. Even if brutish, he avoided a strike that could have cost him his arm. As he sizes up our protagonist, doubt creeps in. Perhaps he overestimated the steel fighter after all. Going head-to-head with a barbarian using body reinforcement is no simple task. Locked in a deadlock where neither can overpower the other, the giant sneers, mocking him and asking if he is truly struggling this much just to cling to life. Growing cocky, the behemoth begins to twist our hero's body, taunting him about the futility of resisting. Despite the agony, the young warrior refuses to surrender. Screaming with unyielding determination, he begins forcing the giant's colossal finger backward. Enraged by this defiance, the hulking gorilla-like brute is shocked by his opponent's relentless persistence. Finally, he decides to release his grip, but that proves to be his mistake. In a swift, acrobatic maneuver, our hero seizes the opening, hooking his legs around the giant's head. He flips over him with the grace of a gymnast. In one seamless motion, his arms lock tightly around the monster's thick neck. The tables have turned, and the giant's life now hangs in his hands. From the sidelines, Warrant Officer Chon grins like a lizard basking in the sun, savoring the sight of the chokehold. To him, the once intimidating gorilla has already been reduced to nothing more than a chicken caught in the hands of a predator. For all its strength, body reinforcement offers no protection against a crushed carotid artery. Even so, the arrogant brute refuses to break character. He scoffs, insisting he can still escape with sheer strength. Yet our hero knows better. The sly smile on his face betrays the truth he has already figured out his opponent's fatal flaw. The system flashes a warning, cautioning him that his body transformation is exceeding its current threshold. But he pays no mind. Blue lightning sparks across his frame, a glowing testament that he is pouring everything he has into this final struggle. Off to the side, one of Sanok's lackeys remarks dryly that, given the steel fighter's stubbornness, he may as well sign up for a lifetime in the afterlife. Our protagonist himself wonders why this gorilla refuses to yield. With a piercing gaze, he locks eyes with Sanok, silently declaring that this is the final warning. The giant, sweating under the mounting pressure, feels his pride slipping away. As the supposed future ace, humiliation is something he cannot afford. Steam bursts from his body in desperation, as if his pride alone fuels him to keep fighting. Then, in a shocking twist, his muscles surge once more, shredding through his shirt in a grotesque display of raw growth. It's as if he has unlocked a hidden stage, his most fearsome form yet. But despite the transformation, his massive new muscles are utterly useless against the chokehold. His neck remains firmly imprisoned in the grip of steel. Warrant Officer Cheon watches in disbelief. Seeing a D-rank fighter reinforce his body twice is unheard of. Yet, even with this unprecedented power-up, the giant's situation remains hopeless. Muscles can't save him. In a chokehold, they are as useless as a flashlight in broad daylight. Now, the air itself seems to hold its breath. The question lingers: who is truly the predator, and who is the prey? With unwavering determination, the blue-headed warrior tightens his hold even further, refusing to let the beast escape. The giant thrashes, his composure finally breaking. Overwhelmed by the unbearable pain, he screams like a wounded animal before collapsing with a thunderous crash, dragging our protagonist down with him. The arena falls silent as the brutal clash reaches its climax, leaving the crowd frozen in suspense. As the dust settles, the crowd is left stunned by the spectacle they've just witnessed. Warrant Officer Shin, however, can't suppress a grin like a man who has just won the lottery, clearly delighted by the unexpected outcome. Against all odds, our protagonist stands tall, victorious, exuding the presence of a beast. In this unusual showdown, he has proven himself the undisputed champion. Night falls, and our focus shifts to the training building. Inside, a group of soldiers nervously crowd around the unconscious gorilla, checking to see if he's still breathing. Fortunately, he has only fainted, spared from a true knockout. A curly-haired soldier rushes forward, towel in hand, eager to congratulate the champion with a hug. Yet the calm and collected victor halts him with a single hand, his eyes fixed elsewhere on Sanguk. Sanguk tries to hide his face, turning away in humiliation after his defeat. But our victorious soldier stares him down, refusing to let the shame go unnoticed. Just then, Warrant Officer Shin steps in, asking for the champion's name. Without hesitation, the soldier salutes and introduces himself as Hyunwook of the First Company. Still, he wonders why a man of such rank has come here. Shin returns the salute and introduces himself as Lieutenant Chon Mango, Raid Tactics Instructor of the Black Tiger Unit. Without delay, he praises Hyunwook for his remarkable display of strength and skill, then extends a hand inviting him to join the warfare raid. The onlookers erupt in disbelief. The mere thought of someone being scouted by the prestigious Black Tiger unit has them whispering wildly. One veteran remarks in awe, "Did the scout just offer him a place in the Black Tigers? They're the best troops in the entire Amt." Another simply shakes his head in disbelief. Humbled, Hyunwook admits that he is nothing more than a lowly F-rank player. But Shin, undeterred, makes it clear that ranks are nothing but numbers created by ordinary men. What they truly need are warriors like Hyunwook. Though his inner self thrills at the opportunity, Hyunwook maintains a composed exterior. He stares at the invitation card in silence, his thoughts racing. Around him, the crowd grows restless, as if they too want to claim a piece of his sudden fame. Shin, sensing his hesitation, finally breaks the silence with a teasing question. "Do you plan to keep me holding this card forever?" At last, Hyunwook takes the card. Yet even as he salutes his superior and promises to consider the offer, unease gnaws at him. He realizes that accepting this path could entangle him in confrontations with dangerous villain groups. Watching from the shadows, Sanguk's angry glare only confirms those fears. His victory has already begun to spark conflict. The scene shifts to the battalion commander's office, where two senior officers share tea. One asks about the state of the Black Tiger unit. Shin responds matter-of-factly, they are short-staffed. The other, a gorilla-faced officer with a forced smile, confesses that guilds have been aggressively recruiting C-rank talent. Soldiers they've trained with time and effort are often stolen away under the guise of external appointments. Their eyes meet, revealing a rivalry beneath the casual exchange. The tension briefly lifts when the gorilla laughs, assuming Shin's visit concerns Sergeant Choi Young-jun. Shin confirms with a grin, but the mood darkens again when it's revealed that Young-jun is currently on leave. The two rivals exchange knowing looks, each intent on recruiting him first. Then Shin casually mentions discovering another intriguing soldier during his visit. Instantly, the room shifts. The scar-faced gorilla falls silent, clearly unsettled, while the warrant officer grins with satisfaction. Meanwhile, outside, the towers of the mountains stand against the night sky. A mysterious voice calls out to Hyunwook, who sprints across the training grounds, his breath heavy in the quiet darkness. Watching from a distance, the gorilla-faced commander speaks into a phone call. Confirming his identity, he shares the latest piece of gossip with confidence. He has uncovered the secret of what Corporal Lee Huck used to do before joining the army. Back outside, the curly-haired guy eagerly tries to grab our blue-haired lead, who's clearly uncomfortable. He firmly tells him to stop clinging, reminding him this isn't some romantic drama. Still, the persistent one clings like a loyal puppy, desperate to be his sidekick and expressing endless admiration. Meanwhile, Mr. Gorilla multitasks like a pro, casually chatting on the phone while giving the go-ahead to handle Corporal Lee in some mysterious way. It's small talk mixed with covert operations. Cut to our main character, who's literally in the trenches. Despite dripping sweat and clearly longing for a break, he powers through the run like it's the final barrier between him and a lifetime supply of pizza. The struggle is brutal, but he refuses to let the treadmill win. And then there's Gorilla again, making things even stranger. His crush on the Mick is obvious. He gazes at him like he's the last slice of pizza at a party. The camera zooms in, revealing that unnerving, overly eager grin. To him, it's not about charm or personality, it's simply that our Mick is the hottest thing around. Life in the bustling city carries on as usual until a young boy senses something odd. Intrigued, he rushes toward what he thinks is a monkey. Standing at the mouth of a dark alley, he calls out, but what emerges is no ordinary primate. Fear floods the boy as he realizes the truth. The creature bears an enchanted circle on its forehead, a sign of mystical powers, and it isn't alone. One by one, more enchanted beasts emerge from a glowing portal, forming a squad that reeks of danger. Elsewhere, our curious hero finds himself at the military base. He sneaks into the battalion armory, where everything from swords to slingshots rests like treasures waiting to be claimed. But he's not alone. A fiery red-headed woman steps into the scene, commanding attention. She reveals that the battalion commander himself has recognized our hero's accomplishments, rewarding him with time off and the right to choose any weapon he wants. But of course, there's a catch. The platoon leader isn't exactly his biggest fan. Memories of a one-eyed figure resurface, and the Mick reflects. Maybe he's been too fixated on his past life. Maybe he hasn't changed as much as he thought. With quiet resolve, he admits that whether the platoon leader believes in him no longer matters. He asks the redhead if she agrees, but she remains silent. Then, in a serious tone, she cuts to the heart of the matter. "Are you really that smug?" She recalls the sword marks left on goblin armor at the gates. They all bore the same pattern evidence that he may have single-handedly faced the first goblin wave. She challenges him. Does that even make sense? Finally, the Mick picks up a sword that looks more like firewood than steel. With a cocky grin, he struts around like the day's champion. The redhead watches, baffled, warning him not to just grab random junk. But he insists this one feels right. The system confirms his choice. The so-called wooden sword is the Cloud Blade, its ability to absorb water and release a misty fog. On the surface, it seems useless, but he declares that in time, this very weapon will elevate Sergeant Choi Young-jun to the title of Sword Saint. The blade's true identity emerges, the dark hand of the Cloudmaster. In ancient Dangun mythology, 3 weather gods ruled Wind, Rainmaster, and Cloudmaster. The Cloudmaster's pitch-black hand was known as the Hand of Darkness, blades hidden within the clouds, tied directly to the Thunder God. When unleashed, the Cloudmaster's hand could summon lightning powerful enough to destroy a mid-sized dungeon monster single-handedly. The Mick believes that with steel and lightning united, nothing can stop him. He's determined to wield this weapon, even as the redhead scoffs, asking if he really thinks such a shabby blade suits his achievements. But he brushes it off. "I'm good with this one. Time's ticking, I don't have the luxury to be picky." Their conversation is cut short as sirens wail across the base. Soldiers scramble into action, rushing to their posts as rumors ripple through the ranks. Emergency breakouts in Ian. Uniforms are thrown on in a frenzy, alarms blaring like fire drills. Our once relaxed Mick instantly transforms serious, focused, and ready for what's coming. He stands silently, poised to spring into action at any moment. The red-headed woman casts him a suspicious glance, clearly sensing something is off. Why isn't he surprised? Why is he so calm, as if he already knew this emergency was coming? The streets are crowded with soldiers standing on alert, ensuring no unexpected incidents unfold. Suddenly, a stern-looking knightly woman enters, leading her squad with commanding authority. 2 ordinary guards watch in awe. One whispers, "This is my first time seeing the Blue Flower Guild in action." The other quickly explains that the Blue Flower Guild has sent reinforcements for this gate backup mission. The soldiers can't help but comment on the sight before them, the extravagant armor and weapons, so polished it looks more like a fantasy fashion show than a battlefield. One jokes, if you could sell what they're wearing, you could buy an entire building in Gangnam. His blonde comrade then reveals his personal plan. "After my service, I'm transferring to Blue Flower. I'll live my life flexing like them." Meanwhile, our protagonist leads his platoon with the presence of a true commander. He reminds his men that the vice president has already confirmed this is a cobalt gate, but he warns them not to underestimate it. These small creatures are dangerous, armed with poison needles and lethal gas. They can inflict more casualties than giant orcs. One careless mistake, and the losses can pile up like a collapsing tower. He notices a soldier's sloppy uniform and immediately calls him out. No rolling up sleeves on duty. This isn't a beach party. Yet, as always, one soldier dares to question. "Do you really think the kobolds will come this far?" His commander shuts him down instantly, painting a vivid image of kobolds gouging out his eyes. The terrified man stammers, And no, sir. To reinforce the gravity of the situation, he issues another critical reminder. Inspect your masks. Poison gas is deadly. Safety comes first. Then Blondie arrives, tossing insults like confetti. He mocks our protagonist, sneering, "Is your trash unit really having a strategy meeting? Careful, or people might mistake you for a support squad." His squad takes the humiliation in silence. Everyone knows the support squad's low-ranked players, the benchwarmers of raids. But our blue-haired commander isn't one to stay quiet. He shoots Blondie a cutting glare and fires back, reminding him that many kobolds slip away during raids. Don't get careless just because you're stationed at the back. Masks on. The red zone is the evacuation area. Safety first no matter who you are. Blondie scoffs, brushing off the warning. I can handle myself. I don't need advice from a sidekick. He struts away, oozing arrogance, dismissing the commander as nothing more than leader of the shitty squad. His squad mates remain silent, their heads low, seemingly resigned to their reputation. But their commander refuses to let the insult slide. Anger burns inside him. Trash squad or not, these are his men, his comrades, and no one mocks them. Overflowing with frustration, he unleashes a fierce speech. His voice is sharp and unrelenting as he demands they get their act together. This isn't the first time I've said this, or is it? This isn't some virtual game. This is real life, where lives are at stake. Don't lose your spirit. His words cut deep. The squad straightens up and roars back in unison. Yes, sir. He continues, explaining the enemy's tactics. Kobolds may be small, but they are cunning fighters. In sewers and narrow passages, soldiers must target their sensory points without hesitation. We have 20 minutes. No wasted time. The squad immediately springs into action, ready for battle. Corporal Lee calls out, "Soldier Junmo." "Yes, sir," comes the sharp reply. Private Park Juno, reporting for duty. Even as they prepare, whispers of doubt ripple among the men. One soldier leans to another. "Have you noticed? Corporal Lee Hyunwook seems unusually tense today." The other nods. "Yeah, he's especially serious. With the routes closed and the city locked down, it feels heavier than usual." Corporal Lee Hyunwook fixes his unblinking gaze on one soldier. His expression is unreadable, but the intensity of his stare makes the poor man shift uneasily, as though his very soul is being pierced. Feeling the heavy tension in the air, the soldier forces an uneasy smile and nervously asks what's going on. The atmosphere feels like a scene straight out of a psychological thriller, with everyone on edge. Suddenly, a needle shoots out of nowhere and plunges straight into Corporal Lee's neck, giving him no chance to react. One glance at it reveals the handiwork of the kobolds and their venom. His body weakens instantly, collapsing toward the ground. Before the soldiers can recover, a poison gas bomb detonates, catching them completely off guard. They fall one by one, dropping like dominoes as the toxic green cloud engulfs them. But it isn't just one bomb, several more explode in succession, filling the battlefield with poison. Most soldiers collapse almost immediately, while a few desperately try to hold their breath and escape the suffocating fumes. Quick-thinking troops scramble for their masks, fighting to shield themselves from the deadly onslaught. The kobolds seize the chaos, lunging from the shadows with ruthless precision. Using the cover of the poisonous mist, they ambush the soldiers, cutting them down mercilessly. Helpless on the ground, Corporal Lee watches in horror as his comrades are slaughtered before his eyes. Then, through the smoke, a massive kobold emerges, its ferocity unmistakable. This is no ordinary attacker, it's the leader of the pack. Lee's eyes widen in disbelief as the towering kobold pulls out a dagger and lunges straight at him. Just when it seems like his end is inevitable, another soldier crashes into the beast, knocking it off course. In the chaos, the dagger slices dangerously close to Lee's eye, compounding his agony. Yet the relentless kobold refuses to fall. Rising back to its knees, blade still in hand, it charges again. Wounded and desperate, Corporal Lee calls out to his comrade. The soldier rushes to his side, shoving a gas mask into his hands and urging him to put it on. But before he can save him, the soldier's head is severed in an instant, flying through the air in a grisly spectacle. Blood gushes from his neckless body, leaving Lee frozen in horror as the surreal sight burns itself into his memory. The scene then shifts to the present, where Park Junmo questions Corporal Lee about why he was summoned. The truth finally emerges: Junmo had once died saving Lee from the kobolds. What we witnessed earlier was a flashback of Lee's previous life. Scarred by those events, Lee now takes no chances. He orders sensors to be placed along every possible path, his paranoia born from trauma. This explains his overly cautious behavior, even when Blondie mocked him. Now, fully prepared, the squad braces to face the kobolds head-on. Back in the flashback, Lee tells Junmo that he will send a signal during the battle, and when he does, Junmo must lead the squad out of the operation zone. Shocked by this unexpected order, Junmo hesitates, but before he can respond, a 6-wheeled military truck speeds past them. Startled, Junmo mutters, "Armed desertion." But Lee corrects him sharply: this isn't desertion. It's a tactical maneuver. Meanwhile, transmissions flood in from the squads. Reports confirm cobalt annihilations, and Beta Squad announces the discovery of a massive cobalt nest in Zone 2B9, housing more than 200 enemies. The platoon commander quickly signals his men with precise hand gestures, a silent language only seasoned soldiers understand. With flawless coordination, they move into a wide-range magic formation, preparing for the brutal mission ahead. At the commander's signal, the squad infiltrates the nest through a sealed door, swiftly falling into formation. A command echoes, "Activate the magic circle." The soldiers obey instantly, enchantments glowing as they brace themselves for battle. From the shadows, the kobolds stir. In seconds, the entire cavern swarms with the creatures, crawling out like cockroaches flooding from the gutters. The beasts snarl, enraged by the intruders. With feral speed, they charge. Yet the squad stands firm, holding their ground under strict orders to wait. The tension builds until a single reckless kobold lunges at them, then the green light is given. The soldiers unleash hell. Gunfire erupts, spells ignite, and flames engulf the battlefield. The kobolds are torn apart, their bodies incinerated in waves of fire and lead. The once silent nest transforms into a chaotic symphony of destruction, as the squad proves their might against the monstrous invaders. Outside, soldiers led by Corporal Lee move with precision, strategically placing sensors at every corner of the streets. Zone 2 reports the successful completion of their deployment, confirming that all sensors are secured. Soon after, Zone 5 also signals their success. Meanwhile, Corporal Lee kneels on the ground, carefully fastening something with duct tape. Focused on his task, he doesn't notice someone approaching until a voice calls out from behind. Quickly, he salutes his superior and explains that he's attaching motion sensors according to the manual, marking the designated locations with aluminum tape. Around them, the Blue Flower Knights stand tall, their flags fluttering proudly to announce their presence. However, not everyone is impressed. Lieutenant Lee Minwoo, a wizard of the mage class and a C-rank player with his striking orange hair, watches with dissatisfaction. He reminds Corporal Lee that the Blue Flower Guild is here to assess the situation, not to waste time over a cobalt gate. With authority, Lieutenant Lee informs him that the first platoon will begin operations in 20 minutes, and orders the support squad to focus on retrieving the detox potion. Corporal Lee, ever direct, clarifies that the support squad's true mission, as relayed by the vice platoon commander, is to prevent monsters escaping from the rear from entering civilian zones. Tension rises among the surrounding soldiers as Corporal Lee's raised voice echoes in frustration. Grinding his teeth, Lieutenant Lee Minwoo shoots him a sharp glare, clearly displeased at being corrected. Using his higher rank to assert dominance, he dismisses Corporal Lee with a mocking tone, reminding him not to forget his place regardless of whatever favor the battalion commander may have shown him. To further establish his authority, Lieutenant Lee presses a finger to Corporal Lee's forehead, questioning him about a soldier in the barracks. Corporal Lee immediately replies with discipline, "Private Lee Hyunwook." The lieutenant presses again, emphasizing the soldier's lack of experience, only one real battle against a gate. Once more, the corporal confirms, "Private Hyunwook." Annoyed, Lieutenant Lee snaps, demanding to know how the boy dares to correct him and ordering him to wipe the defiance from his face. But the young soldier remains calm and respectful, replying firmly, "No, sir." The confrontation escalates until a pink-haired sergeant rushes over, breathing heavily as she asks the second platoon leader if something is wrong. This is Sergeant Choi Sanha, a mage of the caster class, a healer, and a fellow C rank player. At the sight of her, Lieutenant Lee Minwoo's composure crumbles. He falters, struggling to find words. This, however, is part of Corporal Lee's strategy. He deliberately provoked her arrival, knowing that she is the lieutenant's weakness. In an instant, the lieutenant's attitude changes. He suddenly acts friendly toward Corporal Lee, as if they've been comrades since birth. Turning to the sergeant with a forced smile, he claims that the support squad was simply struggling with the assessment, and that he was merely reminding Corporal Lee what a real battle entails. His face flushes red as he awkwardly asks why she's there. The clumsy sergeant quickly remembers her purpose. The battalion commander has summoned Private Lee Hyunwook. Confused, our protagonist wonders why he, of all people, has suddenly been called into action. Around him, tanks and four-wheelers gather, forming a formidable force. From atop a building, a commanding officer with red hair observes the preparations through binoculars, ensuring every detail is in order. She notices two figures below, the pink-haired sergeant and Corporal Lee. Before he departs, she reassures him not to let the second platoon leader's words affect him. With a nod, he moves on, knowing more tasks await. Yet the red-haired officer pauses, giving him a playful twinkle in her eye and a warm smile. She suggests that others will finish setting up the sensors, and gently invites him to join her. Though reluctant, he has little choice but to obey. Anxiety gnaws at him as he wonders why the battalion commander has called him, and what purpose lies behind this summons. The red-haired commander continues surveying the scene through her binoculars. A nearby soldier questions whether their attack squad should even be present for a Cobalt Gate raid, especially under direct orders from the battalion commander. Calmly, she responds that it is indeed the commander's will, and that soldiers are meant to follow the orders given. Finally, Corporal Lee arrives at the temporary command post, surprised to hear that he was personally summoned. Inside, he spots the battalion commander and is taken aback to see both the scar-faced officer known as the Gorilla and the lizard-like warrant officer present. Confusion stirs within him as he wonders why Lieutenant Chen Mangho is here, standing alongside the commander. The battalion commander finally speaks up, revealing his true intentions. He wants to put Armik to the test. He proposes that Corporal Lee temporarily take the place of Choi Young-jun, who is currently on leave, and serve as the acting squad leader of the 1st Platoon for the upcoming Second Strike mission on the gate. Armik is stunned by this unexpected turn of events. He questions why the battalion commander, who has never shown much interest in him before, is suddenly paying attention now. Despite his confusion, he knows there's no time to dwell on it. He immediately addresses the battalion commander, pointing out that he has only ever participated in missions with a support squad since arriving at the base, and this upcoming mission isn't a drill. He expresses his concern about putting the lives of 1st Platoon on the line during a real battle. While the outside world appears calm, the atmosphere inside the temporary command post is tense. The battalion commander, nicknamed the Gorilla, bluntly declares that it is an order. Armik bites his lip, realizing he has no choice but to face the challenge. As this tense exchange continues, Delta Platoon reports that the boss monster has left the Cobalt Nest. Personnel on the 2nd and 3rd Red rounds are immediately ordered to stay alert. Armik feels his composure slipping. The realization that the kobolds will soon attack the support squad gnaws at him. The urgency pushes him to grit his teeth. He can't just sit still. No matter the cost, he must act. He speaks up and tells the battalion commander that he has something to say. The commander, attentive, tells him to go on. But suddenly, silence grips our MC. It's as if he cannot summon the courage to speak. Meanwhile, outside, the red-haired woman keeps peering through her binoculars. She spots someone sprinting down the streets and is momentarily puzzled by the sight. The runner is none other than our MC, Corporal Lee, racing forward as if his life depends on it. Suddenly, he screams at the top of his lungs toward his support squad, repeatedly shouting warnings about the gas. At that moment, the sirens wail, and the entire area descends into chaos. Just as in Corporal Lee's memories, green gas begins seeping out of the gutters, engulfing the entire area in an ominous fog within moments. Amidst the chaos, Corporal Lee is terrified, watching the events unfold even faster than he remembers. Back at the temporary command post, he prepares to share critical information with his superiors. The gorilla-like commander gives him a nod, signaling him to speak. Corporal Lee begins by revealing that he has heard rumors about the commander losing his entire platoon in the past. This revelation shocks both the battalion commander and the lizard-like officer lurking in the background. Corporal Lee continues, explaining that this is precisely why he struggles to believe the battalion commander would now ask a mere corporal from the so-called crappy support squad to lead a combat unit just as some sort of test. He turns to the commander, his voice filled with disbelief and frustration, and demands to know if they really see him as nothing more than another expendable soldier. The battalion commander quickly denies this, insisting it's a misunderstanding. But Corporal Lee stands firm. With a straight face and undeniable resolve, he declares that if it comes down to following orders, he would gladly lay down his life. Deep inside, though, he's tormented he can't reveal the truth that he knows what's coming, and keeping this secret is driving him insane. He admits he has no interest in leading the combat squad. To make himself clear, he warns that his lack of battlefield experience could result in disastrous casualties if he were to command someone else's squad. He stresses that, while he genuinely appreciates the battalion commander's faith in him, he is prepared to disobey the order if the cost of proving himself is too high. The battalion commander is momentarily at a loss for words, unsure how to respond to such defiance. At this point, the warrant officer steps in, reminding Corporal Lee that defiance during wartime is a capital offense and he would face the consequences. Corporal Lee remains silent, fully aware of the regulations. But his silence is not out of fear. He's more worried that everyone will die if he doesn't act. Outside, everything seems calm for a brief moment, but inside the command post, the tension is suffocating. Finally, the battalion commander breaks the silence. Surprisingly, he agrees to let Corporal Lee proceed with the original support squad mission. Armek is stunned, especially coming from the usually stubborn gorilla of a commander. But then the commander adds a condition, his tone stern and his expression sharp. He clarifies that, like a true soldier, Corporal Lee must face the consequences of disobeying orders later. Outside, the situation has already escalated. The entire area is engulfed in green gas, sirens wailing without pause. There's our guy, doing everything he can not to breathe in the poisonous air while scanning the battlefield for his comrades. He quickly straps on his gas mask and mutters curses at the damn kobolds under his breath. Without hesitation, he pulls a sword from the enchanted inventory box. This isn't just an ordinary backpack, it's a military-grade, magically enhanced storage unit that can carry a variety of supplies, with the number of items determined by rank. He retrieves a water bottle and pours it over the blade. Instantly, a system window appears, displaying the weapon's details. Its name is Cloud Blade. Its effect is impressive. The blade absorbs water and emits a dense mist. The absorption rate climbs to 25%, signaling it's ready for combat. Now fully geared, sword in hand and mask secured, he presses forward. The toxic fog makes visibility almost impossible. He wonders if he's already too late, silently hoping everyone made it out safely. But the kobolds have already arrived. They tear through the soldiers in their path. Right in front of us, a soldier is savagely cut down. As the view widens, we see the horrifying scale of the attack. Kobolds are everywhere, and the soldiers are desperately fighting back. Amidst the chaos, one soldier takes a brutal beating and cries out for help, calling specifically to Private Park Junmo. Hearing his comrade's plea, a nearby soldier spins around, resolve hardening. He raises his rifle, determined to save his fellow man from certain death. He opens fire with relentless determination, but the kobolds aren't just mindless beasts. They react instantly, scattering before the bullets can hit. The injured soldier survives, but he's in critical condition. Smoke and chaos fill the air, but the soldiers hold their ground. Acting quickly, one soldier instructs the injured man to crawl inside the military box and take an M with him. For context, these boxes are fortified with basic barrier spells, allowing them to function as supply storage and emergency shelters. Seizing the opportunity, another soldier drags the wounded man to safety, leaving behind a grisly trail of blood, a haunting reminder of the carnage. The vice president, witnessing this scene, is frozen in terror. One of the privates tries to snap her out of her shock, but the horror is too much for her to shake off immediately. It's then revealed that she's barely 20 years old. This is her first real mission since her appointment. Private Park finds himself in a bind too. He can't provide proper support to the squad in this situation, adding another layer of pressure. Then, just when it seems things can't get any worse, a soldier shouts to Park that they're out of ammo. Only a few rounds remain before the guns fall silent. The kobolds are multiplying, closing in fast. Realization dawns on Park, they might not make it out alive. Desperation fuels his thoughts, and he considers what Corporal Lee Hyunwook would do in this exact situation. As the tension rises, another soldier yells that Private on M needs immediate medical treatment. The team is forced to juggle the threat in front of them with the urgent need to save their comrade. Then it clicks for Park, a plan inspired by Corporal Lee. While everyone else faces the crushing reality of running out of ammunition, Park still has one weapon left from his inventory. With renewed resolve, he shouts for everyone's attention. He reminds the support squad that kobolds are drawn to shiny objects. He proposes using this to their advantage, lure them away with shiny gear, create a diversion, and give the support squad and vice leader a chance to escape. The vice president pushes back, questioning the idea. Park, unwavering, asserts his authority. This is an order. He channels Corporal Lee's own words, reminding everyone that the Blue Flower Guild is stationed just outside the red zone, ready to strike back at the kobolds with full force. His tone is sharp, his expression almost cocky, but there's no mistaking the determination in his voice. Park orders everyone to grit their teeth and run for their lives. As we glance at the monstrous creatures, it's clear the kobolds have no idea what's about to happen. Private Park raises his hand, fully aware that his limited electric powers can't take down even a single monster, yet the fact that he's using them to save lives brings a genuine smile to his face. With absolute resolve and no fear of death, Private Park charges in the opposite direction. Clutching his shimmering weapon, every kobold in the vicinity turns their attention to him, chasing him relentlessly. He becomes the unwilling star of this deadly spectacle, luring the entire horde away from the platoon. Once he reaches a safe distance, he signals to the others that this is their chance to escape. The soldiers hesitate, their courage wavering, hearts breaking as they realize that Private Park has willingly thrown himself into the jaws of death for their sake. The kobolds are nearly upon him, reaching for his limbs, but Private Park doesn't slow down. He runs full throttle, reminding himself that if Corporal Lee were in his shoes, he'd use his pathetic power exactly like this. In fact, he even imagines that Corporal Lee might have used him as bait if it came to that. Just when it seems certain that Private Park will be torn apart, A gleaming steel blade slices through the air like a laser, cutting down the kobolds as easily as if they were vegetables. The tide of the battle shifts instantly. The once ferocious kobolds are reduced to pieces, yet Private Park, completely oblivious to the carnage, keeps sprinting as though death is still on his heels. Out of nowhere, someone blocks his path, and Park crashes into him, tumbling to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Standing before him is none other than Corporal Lee, radiating authority as he informs Park that he heard every ridiculous word of his mid-battle rambling. Corporal Lee stands tall, gripping his sword like the lead in a medieval epic. A strange mist begins to pour from the blade, enveloping the battlefield in a thick fog. Miraculously, the gas seems to neutralize the toxins in the air, leaving behind an almost refreshing atmosphere. With each strike of his blade, Corporal Lee moves with the precision and swagger of a seasoned action hero. It finally dawns on Private Park that this fearless figure is his fellow soldier. Corporal Lee calls out Park's name with a dramatic flourish. Park, now trembling, stammers and mumbles, desperately trying to explain himself, insisting that he was just doing a perfect impression of the corporal and that things got out of hand. But instead of reprimanding him, Corporal Lee surprises Park with heartfelt gratitude. He thanks him for staying alive, flashing a grin wide enough to light up the battlefield. Tears well up in Private Park's eyes, moved by this rare show of appreciation. Unfortunately, the kobolds have no interest in this emotional reunion and begin charging again. Corporal Lee, still grinning like a man ready for the fight of his life, proudly praises Park's courage before turning to face the incoming horde. His excitement is almost palpable. This is exactly the kind of battle he's been waiting for.